Ted, after a long quest, you track down Inari the Enchanter and have defeated him.
Excellent. I raid his book stash. What do I get?
Well, Ted, your wizard is now one proud owner of the Manuals of Magic.
Nice.
Rance the Rancid, Dread Necromancer, finally defeated. Now, behold the complete works of the Damned.
How big is the complete works of the Damned? Strength is my dump stat.
I think you'll be alright, Ted.
Ugh.
Finally, you face your nemesis, Grimfang the Draco Lich. His library and all of his grimoires now belong to you. Enjoy.
There's gotta be a better way than this.
Hey Ted, why don't you prestidigitation all these books out of here? Hey folks, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. Nerdarchist Dave here, joined by
Nerdarchist Ted.
Nerdarchy is a place for news, views, and homebrews for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, as well as other role-playing games.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and attune to that notification bell.
Alright, we were inspired to craft some magic items for our series known as the Mageforged.
So why don't we use some magic and conjure up some inspiration for this video?
That's a good idea. There we go, the Tome of Holding. Behold! We want to thank our sponsor, Tome of Holding, who currently have a Kickstarter going on. Ted, you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Absolutely. If you're like most gamers, you travel to your place of gaming. How better than to travel than with your own Tome of Holding? Got a nice rolling tray within, place to store your dice, your minis. You can get them in a variety of different styles, whether you want just a rolling tray and plenty of storage space, or whether you want to bust yours open and have nice space for your specific dice, your minis, your pencils. You can get them unadorned or
adorned,
inscribed with a variety of different designs. Go check out that awesome Kickstarter. Link is down in the description and get your own Tome of Holding.
Yeah, these are going to look great on a bookshelf, a coffee table. They're really sharp. Go check out that link down in the description. Now, the Tome of Holding, they've inspired us to come up with a new Mageforged, another magic item. And also, you know, we illustrated in the opening, the plight of the wizard.
Wizard, as I said, you know, typically dump their strength. They're not going to be out there looking for, you know, making melee attacks. They're not wearing armor, so they're not looking to carry a whole bunch of stuff. But if you look at the earlier editions of D&D, spellbooks were like £5. And if you're capturing a lot of wizards and securing their spellbooks, that weight's going to add up real quick. And if you're playing with encumbrance, it's going to suck for a wizard.
That's for sure. Books be heavy, yo. Especially those old-timey tomes. You know, so like what can we do to kind of alleviate for this problem, help our wizards out, and also make a cool and fun magic item?
Well, we can do that. You know, since magic is, you know, ever-changing and you can make all kinds of new stuff, why don't we make a magic item based off of our awesome Kickstarter? Okay,
so first off, we're going to need a name.
Why don't we go with something Nate the Nerdarch threw out there, and that's the Librum Infinitum.
Nice, little Latin-y sounding, but you know, I think that's it's the language of love for wizards.
So, you know, that actually breaks down to, like, you know, infinite library. So, like, what if we had, like, the Book of Infinite Pages?
Book of Infinite Pages, Book of Infinite Spells.
The Tome of Holding?
We could just call it a Tome of Holding, because it kind of works out that way. On a serious note, though, when you look at the spellcasting classes in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and even in the previous edition, the wizard is the only one that has to pay the spell tax. Ted, do you want to tell them what the spell tax is?
Absolutely. None of the classes in the Player's Handbook for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons have any kind of time or gold cost associated with getting new abilities. You know, maybe the fighter or, you know, other melee-based characters might have to buy new armor, but once you start getting magic items, like, that's part of your treasure. Part of the treasure for wizards is going to be finding scrolls and magic books so that they can add more stuff to their spell repertoire. But in so doing, it takes, you know, for the average, you know, an hour to 18 hours to add a spell to their book, as well as 50 gold pieces per level. Now, yes, it's half of that for your selected school, but if you're one of the non-8 traditions, you don't get that reduction.
Yeah, it gets costly fast, and really just having the downtime to put all these spells in your book. You know, some wizards are doing it during their watch, but typically a watch is only an hour, 2 hours tops. And not only that, like, do you really want the guy watching your sleeping form and making sure that there's no danger about to be reading and writing in books the whole time? I don't think so.
Do you want your wizard, chancing exhaustion because he's got to put the stuff in his book rather than actually sleeping?
And then, like, if your GM or DM doesn't offer very much downtime in general, he's going to never have, or her is never going to have time to get these spells into their book. It's a hassle. It's a pain. But we think we came up with a fun and interesting solution.
All right, so we got a problem, and we keep tossing around wizards. So we think we've identified who we're making a magic item for.
Sounds like a wizard to me.
Absolutely.
You're a wizard, Ted. You're a wizard.
Woohoo! All right, so the first thing when making a magic item is to look at that, core concepts of 5th edition. We talk about bounded accuracy, and we talk about that new attunement concept within 5th edition. So are we going to make an item that requires attunement?
So if the item isn't very powerful, then you tend to not have to worry about whether there's attunement or not. But in this case, I think we're going to make something substantial, probably legendary or very rare at the very least. So yeah, this is probably going to require attunement.
All right. So the next thing is we have to look at, we talked about the names, Book of Infinite Pages, Tome of Holding, the Librum Infinitum. That sounds pretty powerful. What kind of stuff is this thing going to do?
Well, first and foremost, I want to think about where I've seen wizards and spell books the most, and it's kind of been impactful upon me and my imagination, and I'm sure it's the same for you and other folks as well. And that is the idea of the wizard casting spells from the book. Like you see images of the wizard with a lectern in front of him and the book, and he's waggling his fingers and lights are coming out all over the place, or he's holding the book even and casting it.
Well, so, I mean, that image right there is that typical, iconic wizard. He's standing there in the midst of battle. The tome is open in a single hand.
Dramatic wind blowing.
Magic is radiating from around them, or fire, lightning is in their hand, and they're conjuring it. It's something that you see all the time, and to me, that's what I see when you get the term wizard.
So that sounds a lot like an implement or a focus for a caster to me.
Absolutely. And, when you've got the 5th edition mechanics where you've got the concept of a focus of something that they hold that's going to replace their material components for anything without a real gold cost value, here you've got that thing that they can hold and take that requirement out the window, and therefore the magic is going to come out of the book and replace those unnecessary little meaningless ingredients.
But wait, there's more. So not only is it a focus, not only is it an implement, we're also going to go with the idea certain magic items, when used this way, add bonuses to hit as well as the spell DCs. And in this case, I think we should go small because it's going to do some other things. We're going to go with a +1 to hit with your spell attacks, +1 to your spell DCs. But there's another reason why we don't want to go beyond that. Let's get into that, Ted.
Absolutely. So we did some research, to kind of cover our basis. You've got the War Wizard wand, the Rod of the Pact Keeper, the robes and the Staff of the Archmagi. Really, really powerful stuff that deal with these bonuses to hit and to your spell DCs. And Bounded Accuracy wants to limit those things because, there's not a huge amount of things that are going to stack. Now, you've got only so many slots for attunement, and therefore you do limit those. Rod of the Pact Keeper being a warlock item, if we're making something for wizard, unless you're dealing with multi-class, we're not even gonna put these in the same ballpark. So when you're looking at it, if you start stacking these things up, you can get pretty massive, and that's a lot for GMs to deal with when you have everything in your attunement slots focused on that one particular aspect.
That being said, It's very important to note as well that you're going to have to hold the book in your hand to get this benefit. Same thing with the rod, the wand, the staves, the robes, you just wear them. But it's important to note that as well. So if there are costly spell components for using these spells, they would not be able to do it anyway. So that is one mitigating factor. Like you said, it would require all your attunement slots to stack them all on. And again, you'll probably end up with a lot of overlaps. So it might not be so bad, and that's also why we're making this a very rare item.
And, you know, limiting it to that +1. Now, we've talked about this being, you know, the Book of Infinite Pages, the Librum Infinitum, the Tome of Holding. So, like, to me, this, you know, we're talking about that weight capacity. So how would we go about getting this stuff to, you know, get rid of that issue?
Well, one step is to say it's kind of a ribbon ability, but, you know, I like it anyway, is the idea once you attune to the book is weightless in your hands, first and foremost. Second thing is the primary function of this book, this magic item, is to absorb knowledge, information. You're going to take the things that you capture, spell books, scrolls, and literally open the book and feed it right into it. It's going to absorb it like ye old paper shredder. You know, they're just going to vanish into magic and runes.
So I actually envision this a slightly different way. You know, you've seen those books out there with the massive spines. Well, imagine if this thing, you know, looks like a normal book, but when you've attuned to it and you want to feed it, you know, new information, you know, via book or via scroll, what if its spine expands, you know, maybe comically, and the pages that you're adding to it, the cover, the meaningless stuff, literally just, you know, vanishes, is obliterated, and the pages, the literal pages that you're adding, fuse to the spine of this thing.
So I almost envision, like, I've seen images on the internet or memes or whatever where you have these ridiculous big books, and, you know, it would be impossible for the spine to actually function the way it's supposed to when you open them, you know, and I like that idea, and it does that, but then it kind of, like, you know, snaps back to its normal size and dimensions.
So, you know, you mentioned that the book being weightless for the person that's attuned to it. You know, what if there's, you know, an actual, like, weight listed somewhere so that it requires attunement before you can actually pick it up? So, like, okay, I had a book, it's 5 pounds. I had a book, it's 3 pounds. So that weight is kept there. So you could have an almost like Thor-like thing where I can't lift this thing until I attune to it.
It is the Mjolnir of spell books. Is that what you're saying?
It could totally go that way if, you know, you're willing to have a little bit of fun with it. You know, where the wizard be like, oh, could you pick up my book for me? And the fighter with his 20 strength is like, oh my god, I can barely move it. And the wizard's like, all right, I got this.
Yeah, you could definitely have some fun with it. It could be a cursed item, or it could have a quirk to it where, like, you have to keep feeding it once a month, or it won't open for you, or, you know, or the curse could be you have to constantly feed it and you can't unattune into it. Might have some other bad side effects.
You could go in a lot of different directions with this. You could have, you know, variable levels of power depending upon, you know, what you wanted. You know, perhaps it's, you know, not linked to spells, and it's just a book of information that you can feed more information to, but it's just like a uncommon, you know, item that stores all this stuff. But I mean, for what we're creating here, I think we're looking to make a specific item. You know, when you add stuff to it, I like for the book to be indestructible, you know, or at least by normal, mundane means. You know, you light the book on fire, it doesn't burn. You know, you zap it with, or, you know, attack it with a sword, and it's fine. But, you know, therefore, when you add stuff to it, anything you add winds up being secure.
That's a good point, obviously. We also had discussed beforehand a little bit of the idea that you could feed scrolls to it to increase your spell book, or you could use it basically almost like a bag of holding, but for scrolls. So once you put the scroll in, you have to decide, is this part of your spell book, or is this going to be something you're going to cast from later?
Right. So, like, with your a captured spellbook, those aren't scrolls. You can't just cast them, so those would just get added to your library. But scrolls, you can make that choice, and it becomes a locked-in choice. You can't make the decision to change it later. It's either added to your spellbook section or to scrolls. And since scrolls are typically paper, they might be slightly more resistant because they're holding magic to damage. They can still be destroyed, but not if you add them to your Librum Infinitum.
That's both a boon and a bane, no Ted.
Absolutely, because if you're holding the scroll, it's still a choice until you decide to use it or add it. But once you put it in the book, you have to make the choice then.
True, but what happens if that book goes away? Someone steals it, you lose it.
Well, that is the problem that every wizard or ritualist in 5th edition has to deal with. You lose that book, you lose access to the stuff that's there. None of your divine casters or other arcane casters have to deal with that. It's like, I don't need a thing. I don't need to worry about it. I know spells and I just get my spell slots back, or I pray and now I have access to stuff. The wizard needs to have the thing.
That being said, though, were you not using this magic item, you might still have the originals. In this case, you don't. I mean, obviously scrolls get consumed, but the spell books wouldn't, and you would kind of have them. So that part's a bit of a double-edged sword. You got to take the good with the bad. It's just the way it works. Now, we also discussed the idea of the book being able to absorb mundane information in books as well.
This is one of the greatest things that I think about this is, you could literally have the book itself really be thinking along the same lines of whoever is attuned to it. So when you go to use a scroll or a spell out of the book will turn its own pages and get you to there, adding all kinds of fun elements to it that oh my God, the book's pages are turning automatically. How awesome is that? But if you add lore to it, while the wizard is, playing around with this book or occasionally reading, it might attune to the thoughts or, reflexively go to a section of lore or a section of the book that the wizard hasn't seen before. Here's a great way to deliver information that you as the GM want your players to know. Maybe you want to give them information related to the quest that they're currently on, or maybe you want to take them down a complete and utter side quest, but you don't know how to get them there. Well, if a wizard all of a sudden is like, oh my God, I was reading this and all of a sudden this map unfolded within my book. Do we want to go investigate this place that we didn't know about before?
It becomes a great place for story ideas and plot hooks you can insert right in your game, whether it's like Ted says, like you're just randomly going through and it pops up or to a certain page. As the GM, you can take some liberties there, or maybe every time they go in to prepare their spells for the day, there's a chance that they uncover a new piece of information. So it's just a great way to basically add stories and hooks to the game for your players. It almost becomes, the book becomes like a NPC quest giver.
And that kind of thing is always just a great thing. So the question really comes down to, is this a magic item you would use in your game? Is there any cool features you'd like to see added? What kind of cool magic items have you made? Down in the comments below, let us know. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
On your way down to the comments, check out that description where you can find the link to Tome of Holding the Kickstarter. Go check it out.
So until next time, stay nerdy.